Okay, finally, live on YouTube.
All right.
Comes the fun part. I am genuinely curious about what you were saying in voice voice chat though.
Yeah, man. I say a lot of random stuff too, so I'm sure. Are we talking about the last one? The last one
Yeah,
thing I was talking
yeah.
about? Yeah. You want me to talk about it right now?
I mean, if you want to, we can do
Yeah.
this.
I
We can
mean,
do this. However, I mean, I'm flexible. I'm down with anything.
yeah. So, I mean, it is like a really big thing. I think within the military is you got a lot of people that when they come in, they're one way. Like we always talk about in the military is like you have like your civilian self and then your military self. Is some guys even joke about it, but it's like you do go through, I believe, like a rebirth phase, if that's kind of like a thing, where the reason why basic training is supposed to be so shocking is because you really need to break down to a very minute level a person's response to like external stimuli. You know what I mean?
Mm,
So that's why we do exercises in basic training where it's like you're gonna low crawl or like crawl on your stomach for like a football field length while someone's firing an automatic, machine gun above your head. Now, even though it's a safe distance above your head, it's to instill within you that you could be fired at and still maneuver. You know what I mean? Like
right.
there's so I think that that's like a really big thing is that upon completion of basic training, you and I think all basic training I feel like is only a little part of like initial training because you have basic training and then I think of like the first experience that a soldier goes through when they're at their first duty station and they're with their first unit. But I think all of that learning within the first year creates this sort of superhero, Superman slash woman complex where, you take these kids, because when I enlisted, I was 18 years old and I was a child, I look at myself now, I'm, about 30 years old and I absolutely was a child. And I think about what I was capable of doing and what I was willing to do is absolutely abnormal when you think about it in like like a more social concept. But I think the biggest thing that I always bring up is that you have people that they have to believe that they can do anything. They have to believe that if someone's shooting at me, which it's impossible unless you're at a specific distance to see bullets being fired at you. Most of the times, like when you think back to Black Hawk Down, a hiss means it's close, a snap means it's like right on you. So it's like when you think back to those types of things, like you have to be able to go past that threshold because it's such an awakening thing. Like I think about and you have to stop me when I go on tangents, but um, I think back to like my first engagement that I was ever in was actually indirect fire, and it was pretty much indirect fires. Rockets were being shot at the base. And again, most people they experience it much differently. Like I was also blown up. I was, I've been in firefights. But at the end of the day, it's like you have to tell yourself that there's actually a person out there that is their only thought on their mind is killing me before I can kill them. And it's such a real, tangible thing. You know what I mean?
Mm, yeah.
And I feel like most people they just act in the moment. So and it never really hits them until afterwards when the firefights died down and their adrenaline relaxes and their body relaxes and they come upon this realization. It's like, wow, that's what war is, that's what fighting is, and I think so many people don't realize that you there's two there's two sides, and this is again, this is my interpretation. So my interpretation could always be wrong, but I like to think after the X amount of experience that I have, that I've developed somewhat of an accurate insight. But when I think about what like soldiers talk about all the time, like, oh, I tap into that other side, or I turn on the switch. But what I don't think they realize is that I've always viewed that as there's two routes. Like when you turn the switch, two things could happen. One thing that happened is you could be in complete survival mode. Everything you do is in preservation of your own life, right? Like the how fast you run, how accurate you shoot, how much you shoot, your ability to think, your ability to move, your ability to, you know, execute rational motions, all those things that go into an active response to a external, fight or flight mechanism, whatever. Guys that get into contact and you just see them go off, but a lot of it could just be they're fighting to save, like, to protect their own lives. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I think there's another side of that, and this is a side that I think a lot of people don't want to acknowledge. And I think that you have this self-preservation side, but then you also have this predatory side, that when a firefight kicks off, there's like a very dark kind of, lust within that person, that they enjoy it. They enjoy the heat of battle, the possibility of being killed, the high possibility of killing, like that sort of, not bloodlust, but that sort of drive, I think, is something that absolutely plays a part. And I think a lot of people try to, no, I was just out there doing my job. I was just doing my duty. They try to acknowledge this self-preservation. I was just there just trying not to die, and I was just trying to protect my buddies, that preservation mindset. But inside, it's almost as if they're trying to convince themselves that they're not that predator. You know what I mean? Where the only reason why they're good guys is because they choose to be, or that they're naturally, you know, aligned with that.
I mean, that does definitely make sense, especially with going, something. And of course, I'm definitely speaking from the outside in here, because I was never in the military. I definitely tried. There was a time where I was heavily, heavily considering going into the Marines. But something that, even in those early stages, something that they always, wanted to, I don't want to say enforce. I don't think enforce is the appropriate word. Something they always wanted to instill in you was they're going to basically tear you down and then put you back together.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you're someone like me who has that overly aggressive, very dominant, hot-headed kind of personality, when they tear you down and expose that part of you, sure, I mean, yeah, in the rebuilding process, they'll keep you in line. And obviously, you don't want to pop off and, get discharged for, something stupid like yelling at your CO or getting into a fist fight with a superior. But
Mm.
if they're tearing you down, and then all of a sudden you have this just very primal feeling, you're not going to want to let go of that. And I definitely think that could, like you said, people, that darker, like, lust, where you walk the fine line between, am I doing this because it's how I've been trained? I'm doing this to survive. These are my orders, so that's why I'm doing it. Or are you, a little kind of in the darker hemisphere, where it's, I don't want to say you get enjoyment out of it, because if I was to make a bold statement to say people get enjoyment out of killing one another or being in combat situations, that sounds very sociopathic. But
I'll
it's
tell you
it's
though.
that high feeling almost.
I'll tell you, there's that. So when we go back to those two sides that I was talking about, the people that are just like adrenaline junkies, that they're just like, let's just get it. Like I just want to feel that that fine line of, dead and alive. That is very much in line with that sort of alpha, very much aggressive sort of switch, that predatory kind of side of things.
Right.
And then I'll absolutely tell you, like, I've encountered people that just enjoy killing, but it's not like reckless killing. It's sort of like the line of like where it's like they feel so in tuned with their duty that they're like, yeah, I have no problem wiping out all of them, like no mercy, let's go. The only good enemy is a dead enemy. Like those types of people, like whether or not they truly feel that, or whether it's just like a rationalization, kind of like that's how I rationalize doing what I have to do. Everyone says it all the time, like, oh, I did what I had to did because if I didn't do it first, they would have done it to me. Like that's why I pulled the trigger. But at the end of the day, I think that there's a very large part of a lot of these alpha type people that truly enjoy what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like it's like anything else. Like I hate to sometimes um compare it to like certain sports, but like you get guys out there that play defense, and they're like, hey, I just love defense on the football field. And it's like I just love like feeling bone and feeling flesh crunch beneath me as I like slam into that person. you
Right.
know is it a little bit sociopathic? Is it a little bit insane? Like possibly, but again, I feel like a lot of these things are perspective driven. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times we believe, or the vast majority of people believe, like, yeah, that's a very sociopathic way of thinking. That's a very non, I would say, stereotypical way of thinking. But a lot of, in another sense, if you go to a group of infantrymen from any branch of service and you say, hey, what do you guys think about just like smoking enemy, like, just laying lead down range? A lot of those guys are like, yeah, 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 it's awesome. So again, like their perspective is more easily accepted depending on the overall like population of who you're interacting with. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's definitely an eye opener though, because that's the biggest thing you learn about yourself is everybody prepares for it. Like at in the back of a lot of people's mind, like when you're in basic training and you go out and you do these training events, and when you have even in like other aspects of life, like the guys that are athletes, when they do the practices, at the end of the day, you have no idea what it is you're going to do when it's on the line. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where a mistake can cost you a lot more than just like, all right, guys, pause, reset, let's do it again.
Yeah, it's not just, oh yeah, you guys, you didn't get the winning touchdown, you didn't score that last run in the bottom of the ninth. It's that feeling of, you could go out there, and if your gun jams, or if you make one wrong step, one wrong move, make one wrong sound, then you're potentially not only endangering yourself, but, and I don't know the technical term, but you're also endangering literally every other soldier around you. I mean, the members of your, and this is what I mean, platoon, squadron. I don't know. I don't.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't. I don't know what they're called.
No, all that, dude, all of that's good. At the end of the day, like I try to explain it to people sometimes because there's a lot of people that are like, I don't understand how some of these guys can't get over it. You know what I mean? Like, hey, like the easy thing sometimes is when you tell someone like, oh, it's not your fault. Like, just get over it. Like, whenever something happens, like, hey, man, don't worry about it. Like, just move past it. And I try to like explain to people like this. Like, have you ever been part of anything that was like a group activity? right? Whether it's a video game or if it's a sport or whether it's you know whatever, right? And you realize that you're not picking up the slack, like the example of like a football player. Like if I'm a wide receiver and every time the ball gets thrown for me for some reason I just keep dropping passes,
Right.
and then all of a sudden we're in the huddle and the play comes up and it's like, hey man, we're gonna run a slot and it's gonna be you. And then that person says, hey man, look, dude, I've literally just been dropping the ball all day. Do not pass it to me. They try to remove themselves from future possibilities of letting people down. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And it's like you take that same sort of mentality and you put that into combat scenarios where it's just like, dude, I'm not, whatever that last mission was, I didn't pull my weight. So and so got hurt. And even though one mistake is different, like if you could drop 20 passes and then finally say, okay, guys, today's just not my day. Don't throw it to me, or hey, coach, just bench me. I'm having a shit day. You in combat when the mistakes, when the price is very high, I think it takes sometimes one mistake or one incident where a person's like, yeah, that's it, I'm done. And people don't realize, but it changes a lot of their mentality. Like in training, we, and I say we as the military in general, like this is, I guess at this point I'm trying to speak as a spokesman for the, but we train soldiers and we train these young men and women to be successful. Like we don't train anybody, like there's no participation trophy in the military. There's
Right.
no like, hey, just do the best that you can.
Right.
If you don't win the objective, if you don't take that objective and whatever, like it's okay. You know what I mean? Like it's either success or it's catastrophic failure. You know what I
Right.
mean? And I think rationalizing that, these young men and women are told that they take that and they like input that into their internal sort of like thinking pattern. Like it's embedded in their DNA that they tell themselves, okay, it's either ultimate success or catastrophic failure. Like no matter what, I must be successful. And when you now start to get to things like, lives are on the line, a round gets fired, if they don't respond the same way that they responded in training, you'll have someone you'll have people that'll either shake it off and then get themselves in the fight, or it consumes them, because very little people react that are brand new. It's like, for lack of a better way of phrasing this, when they get their cherry popped in combat and that first round snaps off, or that first IED blows up or whatever, you have this moment, and everybody's moment is I would say a different length of time, but you choose something. You choose either to shell up, go into internal preservation mode
Mm-hmm.
where they completely shut off to external stimuli, and they are only thinking, like their only pattern of thinking is to keep my heart beating, keep my air flow in my airways continuing. So they're only internally functioning and they're not responsive externally. Or you have the guy that says, okay, like I'm either going to take the one or two routes. I'm either going to be a predator, or I'm going to, be super alpha male aggressive, or I'm going to be in preservation mode where everything that I do is either to protect myself or to protect my buddies. Like I don't care if I hit my shots. I don't care if I'm just trying to lay down suppressive fire so that everybody survives and goes home.
Right.
And I think that's something that people don't realize, is that you can go down a path of shelling up, becoming internalized, and then snapping to. And even though that can only last a fraction of a second, like I only froze for a split second,
Mm-hmm.
that will forever be on that person's mind.
Oh, absolutely. Now,
And
and this is this is definitely a question that kind of just now popped into my head when you said that. Once, say down the road, people have served their time, done their deployments, they're being discharged, they're not reenlisting, so on and so forth. And they come home and try and transition back to a civilian life, which
Mhm.
is hard from the get-go. Which one of those two people, either the predator or the internal preservation style person, which one of those two people do you think would struggle more with permanent, or well, maybe not so much permanent, but long-term mental health issues? Or do you think they would both struggle in a comparable manner, just potentially in like different ways? So like their struggle would be quantity, quote unquote, the same, but it would just be a different kind of struggle.
Hmm. I think the easiest way to kind of answer that would be to kind of think of myself in a manner, and also think of a good friend of mine. Um, when he got out, I would say he was more of a self-preservation kind of guy. Like he was very much like he was a great soldier, very handy in a firefight. Guy
Mm-hmm.
was just, 100%. But you could tell that in his mind, he was like, hey, I need to lay down this suppressive fire. I got to help these guys out. Like he was always thinking of, you know, that self-preservation mentality, but also like the preservation of his, of like, his unit, and then you have those alpha male guys, and I have to say that like for him getting out, it seemed that at first he kind of had that kind of, hard transition, but I felt like that was only to get used to a very relaxed schedule, because in the military, we know what we're doing anywhere from 6 months, 9 months to even like a year out, with
Right.
some of our long range calendars. But when you're in the civilian life, sometimes life is so unpredictable day by day. Sometimes people don't have any clue what they're doing for the remainder of the day, let alone 6 months down the road. And
Very true.
I felt like once he acclimated to that sort of unpredictable sort of lifestyle, and the way that he kind of acclimated that was he got a job immediately. And I don't even think he needed one. I don't even think he really needed a job. I think he kind of got one because he felt the sense of like, I need to know that I can wake up in the morning and I have to be somewhere, versus waking up in the morning and like, what do I do today?
Right.
And he acclimated so well. Like he super successful now, really awesome. Like I'm always like so happy to see him on my timeline getting after it. And he's such a good dude. Um, and then I think of like my own sort of like route that I'm gonna take, because with me, I'm getting medically discharged, and in a way, I wasn't surprised that I was gonna get medically discharged, but it was kind of like a you're still surprised anyways, that sort of thing. Like I know it's gonna happen, but then when it starts to happen, I'm like, damn, I didn't think it was gonna happen like this. So, and a lot of it comes down to, I think, like this self-realization, like trying to accept that it's gonna happen. And I'm maybe it's a little arrogant to me to kind of like think of myself as that. Maybe like predator was the wrong choice of words. I think more like alpha aggressive. You know what I mean? Because I hate to like. I feel like a predator just kind of comes off in like in a different fashion. Because I don't want to think of myself as like a predator, but I was very good at what I did. Um, Especially when I moved from being in a line platoon, which is you have pretty much like you have two aspects in the army. You have the operating force, which is your standard units, your standard divisions, brigades, battalions, companies, platoons, just the guys that go and deploy and do all the stuff. that's the operating force. And then you have the generating force, which is like your schools, your basic training, your additional training. Like, so those are the guys that create soldiers or train and teach soldiers. That's the softer side, I would say, of the house. And I recently moved from the operational force to the generating force. And it was such a different perspective change for me that it was almost kind of like an initial kind of uh, sneak peek into what civilian life could be like, because it was different. I was more responsible for myself rather than being responsible for a squad of people, which is like 9 people, or like a platoon of people, which is like 36 people, sometimes 40 people, sometimes. And for me, I feel like I rationalize getting out of the army and becoming a civilian again with the same way I rationalized leaving the operating force for the generating force. And in
Mm.
a way, I feel like it's the best way I can like kind of like compartmentalize it. And I try to tell myself, like, you were able to do that. Like, you were able to kind of turn off that very hungry, very meat eater, very,
Right.
aggressive mindset. Because the way I did things, like, you could probably pick out a bunch of my soldiers that, that if they were listening to this right now, they would probably tell you that, that I was an absolute maniac. And it's so funny because guys that know me now in my current job, they think I'm probably like very relaxed, very talkative, very, just goofy in general. And I think like it's such a complete change from my previous job. And I like to think that it's preparing me. Like, it's like, instead of slamming on the brakes, it's like letting off of the gas. You know what I mean? Like, I'm still going to come to a stop eventually, but it's less of a hard transition. Like, I think like there's guys that are like the aggressive alpha male dudes that they leave the operating force from, like, just being hardcore, get after it kind of guys,
Mm-hmm.
going right into the civilian world. I feel like it's such a hard transition. It's like hitting the brakes.
Right.
They're just like, it's a knee jerk reaction, and all of a sudden they're dropped into this new sort of scenario, this new sort of landscape, and they feel like okay, what am I doing?
Right. I
I know
re-
what I'm supposed to do, but like, what am I doing?
I really like the comparison you drew when you said it's like slamming on the brakes, because as soon as you said, I don't know what it was that you specifically that you said that resonated with me, but a car analogy immediately popped into my head. So for
Yeah.
you, going from, frontline, out there every day in the middle of it, to
Hmm.
your current job, it was like you just downshifted. You went
Yeah.
from, second back to first, or third to second, whatever. But for these guys that go from being, you know, dual wielding MG42s, battle cry, take me to Valhalla, frontline, just animals, and
Yeah.
then all of a sudden they're a civilian. You didn't downshift their car. You just straight up yanked the engine out while they're going 100 miles an hour down the highway.
Absolutely.
Like, you just said, do what you're doing now, and then 10 seconds later, stop. Like, yeah,
It's
it could work for some people if they're those people that are really receptive to change, just very very go with the flow, very malleable.
mhm.
But a lot of people, and I could even see it being like that for myself, just, kind of knowing how I am and kind of projecting myself into that situation. That could do some serious shit. Like that
Absolutely.
could that could go smoothly, but at the same time, I feel like a majority of the time just flat out right backfires,
Yeah.
because
And
you don't have, I don't want to say you don't have a purpose anymore, although I think that is partially fitting, but I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier about how your friend immediately just got a job as soon as he left the military, because you get so ingrained in the strict scheduling, long-term deployments. You know that in a week you're going to, Afghanistan, going to Italy, wherever your deployment is, you're going to be there for, X amount of time doing this, and this. And then you try and transition back into the civilian world, and you don't have that. So you definitely do still have a purpose. That's why I think, quote unquote, that's not the correct phrasing. That's not the words I want to use. But you don't like having unpredictability, I suppose could be an appropriate word that I'm looking for, just because you're so used to your entire existence being planned out for, upwards of 6 months ahead of time. And then you come back and you just don't have that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, something interesting that you brought up too is like the easiest way I can explain this to some people sometimes is like, have you ever gone and done like a like leg day at the gym, right? Everybody says the second day always hurts more than the immediate day after. You know what I mean? Like the soreness of your muscles, like you don't
Mm,
feel just how much damage you did,
right.
or how hard you worked out until days passed. You know what I mean? And then it's like ways that you can mitigate that is, post workout stretching, next day
Mm-hmm.
workout stretching,
Right.
rolling out, doing things like taking ice baths. Like you can do things in between day zero, the 0 hour of you finishing your workout, and then like 48 hours later when you feel like the worst of it. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's ways to mitigate that pain, to lessen that pain so that it's more tolerable, because there's been some leg days where it's like, dang, I really hate that I have a second story house right now, and I can't get off the toilet, or something wild like that. And so like the thing that I think about is I compare that very much to like military life. Military life is so hard on your body and it's so hard on your mind. And then all of a sudden you get plucked from that, lifestyle and from that way of thinking, and you get dropped into a complete, you know, different atmosphere. And it's exactly like that hard workout that you don't feel right when you're done with your workout, but you feel like the next day or the day after. And you're like, oh man, I really wish I would have stretched. I really wish I would have done all these things that would make it so I'm not in so much unbearable pain right now. And that's so reminiscent of mental pain and anguish that a person can go through if they don't take the proper transitionary
Mm-hmm.
uh, measures.
Yeah.
Like I feel that my time in the generating force right now in my current job, even though it's still a very aggressive job and what I do has such meaning, and it's still within the wheelhouse of uh, uh, um, a meat eater warfighter type guy, I
Mm-hmm.
would still say that it's still a very considerable downshift from my mental uh, perspective
Right.
than my previous job. So I feel like for me, it's like I'm doing that little bit of stretching post workout so that my 2 days later doesn't hurt the body as bad. So that when I'm out and I'm got a beard and I've got, long hair, that my mind, because I feel like, our bodies break down. And even when you're in the military, your body breaks down faster than anything else. Yeah, I could honestly compare to. But I
Right.
think what we forget about the most is our mind. Your mental health is so
Mm-hmm.
devastating, and I know there's a lot of people out there that know about, the 22, the statistic of 22 veterans, 22 soldier suicides a day, 22 a day, 22 people a day that served in the military, unfortunately end their lives. And a lot of these people, you always hear the same thing. I didn't know any of the signs. I didn't. He didn't give off any hint that he was going through pain. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and the thing that makes my heart just ache is, and this is something that most people don't know, is for me, I've lost more people to suicide in the military than I have in enemy engagements.
Mm-hmm.
And that is such a hard lesson for people to learn. Like, everyone says like how dangerous war is and how dangerous going over there and deploying is. Like, I'll be honest with you, when you live life on the edge, I was in Iraq for 2 weeks before I was blown up and knocked unconscious on the steering wheel of a vehicle. And my last deployment, I was literally in a 13-hour, 11-hour firefight, roughly 48 hours before I was on a plane back home to see my wife and my kids.
Mm.
And such a drastic shift. Like I know what it's like to be in those crazy, crazy scenarios, and to just think that, like, throughout that entire thing, people were lost. Unfortunately, people passed away, people didn't make it, but I've lost 3 times as many people to suicide that I have lost in combat.
That's I want to say mind blowing, but I don't even think mind blowing can explain it. Like
Yeah.
that's so what just wow.
And I feel like that's something that so many people, don't even realize, is that it's so easy. Like, and again, this is perspective. There's a lot of people out there that could probably say, like, what are you talking about, being in a firefight when you've got, bullets flying, explosions are going off, everything's going crazy. Like, if you can find peace in that, it's a very scary thing, and I felt that there were times I was in certain firefights that I never felt more peaceful than ever. Like, I'm also a very religious guy, and there were multiple times where I was very, very aware of the fact that I'm probably going to die. And it was my last deployment too, because um, it was such a rough mission. And I told my wife, I had lied to my wife. I was like, yeah, we're just gonna go check outside of the fence. It's not a big deal. And I was gone for like 11 hours, dude. And
Mm.
it was such, like, I remember just feeling like halfway through, I just kind of told myself, there were so many close calls. Like, I just felt like on that specific day, it's almost like, it's like, when you can smell rain, like, before it happens, like, it's
Mm-hmm.
like, there's people like, oh, I could smell rain's probably about to come on. I felt in that moment, I was like, you know what? I think this is it, man. Like, I
Mm.
had like a weird feeling, like a weird sense of like awareness. And I was like, you know what? This is probably going to be it. Like, you can almost like tell it's going to happen before it happens. And I feel like that sense of clarity, like, it didn't make me shell up or anything, but it made me, like, I told myself, I was like, well, if I'm probably going to go, if this is going to be it, if this next RPG round, these things have been so close, like, these things are literally hitting the ground right in front of my vehicle, this next one probably is going to hit us. I was like, well, then I might as well do the best I can right now. I'm going to try to take some of them first. I'm going to try to at least prevent them from doing more damage. And that sort of like awareness, like, there's such a peace about it. And I know it's kind of weird sometimes, I think, for people to kind of hear that. I've never been in that situation, or that that particular event. And coming back from that deployment, I had a very, very close friend of mine. Like, this guy was, you develop very close bonds with people when you serve in the military. And I've always had a very protective sort of nature with my wife and my kids, like even more so than I am with like my own soldiers. My
Mm-hmm.
wife and my kids, like I rarely introduce my wife and my kids to people. But the guy that I shared such a close bond with, like he was teaching my daughter how to play the guitar.
Mm.
And this dude was like, he was one of my brothers, you know what I mean? Like this was to me, like he was my little brother. And on deployment, like this guy was, like I said, he was kick ass. And he went through something really hard on deployment. And I'm not going to say the specific details of it, because if I say the specific details, it's immediately going to highlight certain people. And I don't want to do that. But he went through something in his personal life on deployment. And all of us were super supportive of him. And this just honestly attributes to a big reason why, if you know someone that's gone through something life changing, it, even if you don't even think like, oh, they're not that type of person, you need to be there for them. You need to think like, I'll wait until he starts giving me more signs. At the first sign, you have to be more reactive, because I'm telling you, when I was at his funeral, well, his memorial service, I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't able to go to his funeral because he ended up committing suicide.
Mm.
And it came out of such nowhere. And I'll tell you this, like when he killed himself, I didn't take it very well at all. And I had lost like he was not even the last person that unfortunately had committed suicide that I've been very close with. But he was one of the ones that hit me the hardest. Well, the second one that hit me the hardest. If we have time, I'll tell you about the first one. That was a rough one. But and I was so not willing to accept it. Like I was convinced that it was a cover up, that he didn't kill himself, that someone murdered him and they made it look like he killed himself. Like that's how that's how unaccepting I was of the situation. And then you go back and then you're just like, was I just not wanting it to be real? Was I just not as receptive as I should have been to the signs that could have been right there in front of my face?
Mm.
Or was he just so good? Like everyone always think that, and nothing against people that go through this sort of battle, this internal battle, but the ones that are the scariest, because every suicide attempt, be it successful or unsuccessful, is scary. But the ones that I feel that are the scariest are the ones that never say a word. You know, are the ones that say like, "Hey man, I'm going to go use the bathroom." And then next thing you know, you're like, "Hey, where's so and so?" And then you find out that they're gone.
Mm.
You know, there's no last text message. There's no, "That's it, cruel world. I'll see you later. If only
Mm-hmm.
someone had been there for me." Like those little tiny cries for help, those are still scary. And whether that person's, you know, going to follow through with their suicide attempt or not, those are all scary. But I always felt that like, I'll never forget that night, you know, just when I hear, because I wasn't with him, but for people to say like, yeah, he just said he was going to the bathroom. Next thing I know, he drove away in his car, thinking we all thought he went home, and then we find out that he went to an abandoned area and killed himself. And it's just like, you don't want to believe it. And that's why like your mental health is so important. You can be the strongest dude in the world, Iron Man, never gonna die, never gonna be cut. I'm Achilles, I can't be hurt. But you don't realize that your mind, your mental state is so fragile.
Mm,
it's like always on the precipice of just darkness.
yeah. I've always been involved very team based, activities from anything, content creating and being in an org, taking a staff position with the EM, my previous org I was in, jobs, I was in marching band all through high school and college. So, and something they've always taught is, you know, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And what people have to realize is your body in essence is just one big chain. Everything's connected. So you can have, this, extremely strong, physique, this, just dangerous, knack for, you know, doing whatever you're told to do, no matter how, white, dark, gray, fine line it might be. But if you're leaving, I don't want to say leaving your mind unchecked, but if you're not considering it, if you're leaving it out of the equation and your mental health, your mindset takes a hit from what your body is doing, that's still going to overall negatively impact you because, if your mind breaks, your mind breaks. I mean, if you have a, a psychotic episode, who gives a shit if you can deadlift 610 pounds? That's not your mind, that's your body. Your mind broke, and that completely throws off everything because it's the only one you have. I mean, yeah, if I could, plug myself into a PC when I'm having mental health issues and reprogram myself and make, my right arm or my right arm muscle process emotions and logical thoughts and, a rational, mindset, yeah, I'll find it handy because then my body could do the job my mind is doing. But we're not built that way. And I think people, I don't know if it's a hesitation to talk about mental health because, it's still a relatively new thing. Obviously, mental health problems have always existed, but I think our openness and our willingness to work with them and help, people get the help, the therapy they need it's a relatively new concept in the grand scheme of things. But I don't know if people are hesitant to discuss it because they're scared or because they have this, I don't want to say superhero mindset, but they have this feeling that they can handle it themselves, or if they don't talk about it because they just don't know how to. And that was definitely, one of the reasons that, I even wanted to start this podcast because my entire life, I have not done very bright ideas. I have done some very, very questionable things. I have done some dumb shit. You know, when I was 14, got diagnosed with scoliosis. My spine basically looks like a question mark because of how it curves. And as a response to that, the doctor prescribed me with Percocet. That's a really strong narcotic to give a 14-year-old.
Yeah, that's insane.
By the time I was 18, a 30-day prescription of Percocet would last me a week tops. And I was not popping them orally. It had developed to the point where I was in fact crushing them up and snorting them. And then my body started resisting that. So what did I start doing next? It went from just Percocets to all of a sudden whatever I could get my hands on. You know, Percocet, Lortab, Tramadol, Xanax, anything. And then that stopped. And all of a sudden, cocaine got brought into the mixture. And then I woke up one morning and looked in the mirror and realized I was a completely different person. And I didn't like that. I missed who I was. So I managed to, get myself clean, get off all of that. But going through those pains of withdrawal and, just forcing my body to detox itself of all of these substances that I had just been force feeding myself for years. Then all of a sudden alcohol pops up because it numbed my body to the point where I wasn't hurting and I could still function. But then the alcohol got to the point where it wasn't helping anymore. So that led to more alcohol and more and more and more. And I turn around and I'm like, the hell? I just started recovering from being an addict, and now I'm an alcoholic. Like, what am I doing? And unfortunately, I got a DUI in the process. Literally the worst thing I've ever done in my entire life. And I really opened my eyes and, really started to evaluate myself and my surroundings, because while I was going through all of that, I had my mom to lean on. And through that entire process, she was my absolute rock. Like, no license, no nothing. Still trying to work, still trying to go to AA classes. I've got court dates all over the place. She is right there with me the entire time. She is the one that came to the jail at 4 o'clock in the morning and pulled me out of a drunk tank because granted, I blew a .08, but I was 20 at the time, so it was still a DUI. But, I mean, she did everything for me. And I realized that there are people out there that do not have someone like that. And I do feel like that, in a way, it contributes to, high number of, maybe not so much military, but a high number of suicides in just the general population. Just a hesitation to discuss things because they feel they don't have someone to turn to, have someone to talk to. And just an overall, lonely feeling. And if you're dealing with mental health problems, the last thing you need is to feel lonely. I can 100%, speak that with the most certainty ever, because there is nothing wrong with doing things on your own. There's not. But the human body is only capable of doing so much. Some things, and I don't want this to turn into a conversation of being independent or dependent or so on and so forth, but there are just some things that we cannot do individually. Obviously. I mean,
I agree.
to state the
100%.
obvious, we can't have kids by ourselves. I mean, we have to have a partner for that.
I'm not even gonna debate science with you. That's an absolute.
So it's like there's going to be these things where we just need someone that we know, and I'm gonna use a military analogy here because I love it. I love the meaning behind the phrase. We just need someone to have our six. That's all we need at the end of the day. When we're I won't say all we need. Obviously, there's much more that we need, but having someone that has our back like that can definitely help things, because you don't feel like you've been abandoned. You don't feel alone. You can, you have someone to vent to. You have someone to call. Say, hey, do you just want to, like, I don't know, go fucking walk around Walmart and laugh at people because they're wearing pink thongs with flamingos on them and Yeezys. I don't know. Just do something to help keep your mind off of it. Have someone, when you're having those bad days, to vent, to talk to someone that's going to say, you know what, they may have been through it so they can relate to you. They may have never dealt with these specific issues, so they may not be able to relate to it directly, but they can still be there for you, be that empathetic friend. And I don't know if I don't like I said, I don't know if that could be affecting our hesitation to discuss things as a human race, but I personally feel like it weighs into it. I've talked to people before that partially disagree. Um, but when it really came down to it, when I was, quote unquote done having this moment of, self-discovery, reevaluating everything I was about, it almost felt like fate, because right around that same time is when I started streaming. And being someone who had just gotten done being an addict, going through recovery, I mean, hell, I still say I'm in recovery to these days. But just being in that mindset that I was in, and then all of a sudden I'm given streaming and content creation as an outlet, it just felt right. So it was like when I first started toying around with this idea, a few months ago, after Buckshot and I stopped doing our first podcast, it was like, well, you know what? Well, while I was laying in bed every night hurting because I didn't, fulfill my daily quota of nose candy, what did I do? When I wasn't barred out on Xanaxes, what did I do? I laid in bed and watched YouTube videos. I watched people like I Am Wildcat, Moose Knuckle, Basically I Do Work, Vanoss, PewDiePie, Markiplier, Jacksepticeye, just doing incredible things and playing video games. So it was like a physical embodiment of the phrase, when one door closes, another one opens. I had just shut off, a part of my life that I had been dealing with since I was 14. Just completely closed off that section of the house that I had built myself. And all of a sudden this door opens, and it's like, I've been playing video games since I was 8. I like to think I'm a moderately entertaining person. I don't know. And I have this desire to help people through, just doing these spectacular things. And then I'm seeing people make a damn good living for themselves playing video games and doing these amazing things for people, because, they want to give back. They want to, put into the community what they've received from the community. And it was just, it was like I finally had the last piece to my puzzle. It all made sense. So for years now, I've always been like, what, one of these days I'm going to reach a point in my content creation where I want to start a podcast. And that was great. Beginning of the year, Buckshot and I did one, but it was, and we've talked about this. It was, interviewing content creators, people in the esports industry, a little bit of everything. We've had female guests, so it was like, how is it, being a female gamer, so and so forth. Talked about that. We talked about we had
easiest thing in the world.
Yeah, we had
I'm playing, dude.
we had
females out there.
we had Howler on the podcast one night, and it was, we just wanted to get his like viewpoint from it. So it was like, what's it like being, a 13, 14, 15-year-old kid content creator, you think, 13-year-olds out here making millions of dollars on Fortnite could, negatively impact their life, maybe take away from their childhood, not really show them how to be a functioning adult. And it was great. I loved it. Some of the best times ever. But I still had that nagging feeling like I love this podcast. I love doing a podcast, but I want the podcast to be more. So it 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 just came full circle. Everything led me back to mental health and talking to people via, a podcast. And I after doing last week's episode, and last week's episode wasn't even really dedicated to mental health. I literally talked about love last week. But I liked that episode because I think love being such a dangerous emotion can lead to mental health issues. So they're kind of related, but kind of
Mhm.
not. And just the overwhelming response. I mean, granted, two people could have said they loved it and it would have been overwhelming response for me because I'm just one of those people. Like if one person says, "You know what? Thank you for doing what you did. That meant something to me." Then it's a success for me. I don't care if it was one person or if, I'm Mr. Beast giving $1,000 to 1,000 people. If I can impact someone in some way, it doesn't matter how many people, I've done my job. And then all of a sudden, who is this DeadFett guy? Like, what? And just interacting with you, in the community meetings and voice chat, hearing, the things you had to say, I was like, fuck, I, I like this guy. And the fact that you have, different outlooks on things, you come from the military, so and so forth. So you have that experience to pull into the mixture. It was like, you know what, we could do something with this. So
Absolutely.
it's
I mean,
it's it's so I don't know, it's just so weird how things have played out.
yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm like Shrek, man. Ogres are like onions, and I got a lot of layers, and I've definitely lived a very interesting life. I mean, in almost 30 years, I grew up overseas. So from the time I was 13 to the time I was 18, I lived in Istanbul, Turkey.
Right.
So I know what it's like to grow up in a predominantly Muslim country, being a white Christian American male. Um, I traveled to almost 11 to 13 different countries before I even joined the military. So that was interesting getting into the military when I had to show my passport and they ran my background check and they're like, why have you been to all these countries, man? I was like, I was on a traveling sports team. So, and then obviously
Mm,
my life in the military, but I grew up, I think, a very unconventional sort of way. And I feel like a lot of the things that I learned growing up and then in my adult life have done a real number on me. And I thought at almost 30, I feel like at 30 years old, I wouldn't be having the issues that I'm having right now with mental health and mental strength, really. But something that you mentioned earlier, being able to not lean on someone, but someone that's got your six, that is such, like, you really did hit the nail on the head on that one, because for me, I can think back to an actual specific moment in my life when it was downhill real bad.
mm,
Like a lot of people know what it's like to want to kill yourself, but a lot of people may not know what it's like to not care anymore.
Right.
Like, so like they're like the people that die of just malnutrition, and it's like self-inflicted malnutrition. Like they're not trying not to eat. They're not trying not to drink or water or take care of themselves, but their mental state is just so far gone that they don't care. That when you ask them, "Hey, when's the last time you've had something to eat?" They can't tell you because in their mind they've just shut that part off. And going from, I right now I'm like five. I actually believe, this is a side note, but I actually came into the army 72 and a half inches. That's 6 foot and a half inch.
Right.
And I am now, after being in for 10 and a half years, almost 11 years now, I am absolutely scraping 5'11". So I know what it's like to lose about like almost an inch and a half of your height. So, but the reason why I say this is I've always lived my life being about 180 pounds, 190 pounds. I've always been athletic. But I was absolutely at a point in my life where I stepped on the scale and I weighed 145 pounds.
Jesus.
And it was just from malnutrition. Just, I didn't care anymore. And I wasn't, and the funny thing was I was in the army and I was absolutely like at work. Again, this is my perspective. I mean, people could probably tell you that I was a wreck, but I felt like I only cared about waking up in the morning to do, PT workout, going to do training throughout the day, and then going home and drinking myself till I fell asleep, waking up in the morning, and then rinse and repeat. And then my body started to shut down. And I think at one point I had gone 10 days, about 10 days without consuming a piece of food. And it wasn't for like I'm not going to eat, but it was just self-preservation just turned off completely. And it was just it was a very, very bad time. I had lost some personal people in my life. I was going through some relationship issues. A very, very, very close friend of mine died in a motor vehicle accident, and I was with him, and I tried to resuscitate him, save his life. I was the first responder, and he unfortunately passed away, and I wasn't able to save him. And that year was such a hard year. And at one point, I just remember it all just kind of just clicked off. I was just like, F this, man. I'm done. I'm done. Like, it is what it is. And when I reached the darkest part of myself, like, people don't realize that you can meet the most evil person, I think, sometimes in the world, but you'll never be surprised. You never be more surprised than you will when you meet yourself at your darkest moment. And you want to deny that part actually exists in you, but it does. And it exists in everybody. We haven't met that person yet.
Yeah.
And I remember that the moment that my life changed was when I met my current wife. And I tell my wife to this day, I was like, you've got no idea. Like, she has zero idea. Like, I feel like she kind of has a concept of it, but she has no idea what it's like when you owe someone your life. Like, I've told my wife before, man, I was like, dude, lady, you don't know that when you picked me up out of the gutter, like, on the outside, I looked like a person that was just having a hard time. But for the most part, maybe it was just my dashingly good looks or something. But she definitely took a chance on me. And all of a sudden, it was like the hand reaching down into the hole just to help you out, just to help get you the strength to climb out of that hole. And I felt that when I broke the top, it was like when I was a kid, like this is probably a little crazy, and I'll say it too, but I used to try to hold my breath underwater to like the last possible moment. You know, like some people say like, "Oh, let's see how long you can hold your breath for." But I used to try to hold my breath to get myself to the end
Mm-hmm.
before I had to, gasp for air and do those sorts of things, because something was always kind of like I don't think it interested me, but I always felt that there's something that I did. But I tell my wife that meeting her and dating her, I'll never be able to explain to her just what that did for my life, because everything that I did past that, every self rehabilitate, like I'll tell you right now, it's very easy to admit you have a problem sometimes. And okay, that's probably a false statement. Everyone probably has a hard time admitting they have problems, but when you're in the military and there's such a stigma and there's such a stereotype of never admitting when there's something wrong and hiding your personal problems so much because nobody wants to get in trouble, nobody wants to forsake their career, nobody wants to, essentially label themselves as a particular type of soldier, and they always try to hide their personal issues. And it was very much so for me like that. But explaining to my wife that after meeting her, life meant something for me again.
Right.
And she didn't change. She did not say like, okay, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. Like now she does that because I always tell everybody that's to me, that's mama. That is 100% mama right there. But back then, like, I wanted to be healthy. I wanted to be everything that she could possibly want in life,
Right.
because she was like my angel
Mm.
that came to me and was like, you know, let's get you out of that hole, man. It looks mighty dirty down there. And I just remember kind of looking up and just mentally being like, yeah, I think you're right. I think I'm gonna get out of this hole. And to this day, I explained to her, I got a lot of issues that I deal with currently that, I'm getting help for, that I would have never gotten help for if it wouldn't have been for my wife telling me, listen, dude, you're going tomorrow. All right, mama, I'm going tomorrow. Like that's how it always is. My wife says, listen, check it out. Go get yourself something to eat. All right, mama. Because I overwork myself. I do all that stuff. And she's always telling me, listen, this is what you're going to do. You're going to go get help. Because right now, you need the help. And I was like, all right, you got it. And love, unconditional love, the purest form of it is like heat. It can burn you, it can hurt you, it can warm you, it can resuscitate you, it can do so much for you. But it's something that you have to respect.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so important. And I felt that my wife is why I feel that every day outside of the military is going to be all right. Like 100%, when we talked about that earlier, it was like, who do you think is going to have a harder time? That kind of not really beta male, but that beta kind of, preservation, that secondary person, that non-predator / aggressive guy. Is he going to have the hard time when he gets out, or is it going to be the other guy? And it was, if you've got someone the way that I have my wife, that is more than just your partner, that is that's my life support machine, that I can breathe on my own, I can eat on my own, but I know that if for some reason something fails, she's always going to be there, and she won't let me down, and she knows I'll never let her down. And it's like, when you have that, I feel like that's the most, no, nothing really can hurt you at that point. And the most important thing people need to realize is no weapon on this earth can hurt you more than you hurting yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, my wife is the greatest defense against all weapons, including myself.
Mm.
And it's such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it definitely truly is. And
Yeah.
that's coming from someone who's not married.
Not only, and I'll have to save this for our next one, because with dealing with the mental state of a father, but I'm absolutely a father of 5 daughters.
Oh,
I have what is called the infantryman's curse, only giving birth to daughters. So
uh,
I don't know. It must
oh.
be these awesome back rubs that I keep giving, making these babies. But so it's definitely, life is awesome.
That is
Life is such an unpredictable, cataclysmic event, one after the other, that you'll never know. You'll never know. So I always tell people that are listening now, listening in the future, listening whenever, nothing is more special and precious than the next second.
right.
Life is weird, man. Life is so weird.
It really is. It's like you never really know what to expect, but it's like it. I don't want to. I mean, I guess it's almost like it doesn't matter because you're excited for what's next, or at least curious about what's next. Because I won't necessarily go so far to say excited, because obviously there's negative things that occur, but I don't know, being a human's weird. Like,
Oh,
is
100%.
that such a strange thing to say? Like, like being not knowing, like, I mean, yeah, I got off work 12 hours ago. I came home, I slept. I got on Discord. I knew we were doing the podcast tonight, but it's like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing tomorrow. Like, I know I'm off work. That's it. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know what I'm gonna do. I might wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning and be like, I'm making pancakes, or I might wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning and be like, I'm making waffles. Or I could wake up at 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon and say, God, I'm such a lazy piece of shit. I should get out of bed. I mean, it's like you never know what's next, and I don't know if it's this might sound really weird. This is probably the weirdest thing I've ever said in my life, and that's coming from someone who, to entertain my coworkers, I randomly make sex noises periodically throughout the day. This is about to be a weird thing.
Hey, you're probably not going to surprise the guy in the military. I'll tell you that.
That's fair, but something that helped when I got to my low point, and this, I don't know, because I did have my mom, true, but obviously my mom's not inside my head. There was some stuff I had to do, but something that helped me, like when, metaphorically and literally speaking, when that gun was to my head and I was just like in those real dark places. Something that always kind of pulled me out of that was that I don't want to say thrill because that's going to make me sound like a total adrenaline junkie, which I am, but it's like something that made me kind of, like refocus and get my head back on straight was what are you missing out on? Like it was so weird because people talk about FOMO these days, like always got to be involved, constantly know what's going on because you just have that fear of missing out. You want the latest drama, the hottest tea, the spiciest news. But it's like when I was on the verge of ending my life, it's like, Ben, what the fuck are you doing? Like you don't know what's coming next. You really want to miss out on that? Because you're in a hole because you wandered too close to the darkness. Like do you want to miss out on a family, kids, grandkids, watching your niece grow up, niece and nephew now? And it was just like as much as I wanted to just say, to quote a meme, fuck this shit, I'm out, and then just dive into a trash can, at the same time it was like, no, I don't want to miss that. Like I just don't. And that was something that I kind of always found peace in. And it's weird because it's so counterintuitive because I harp on having someone to vent to so much. Having someone to talk to. It's such a strong thing to have. Whether it be a best friend, a situation like you where it's your wife that is just your absolute rock. And it's like when I was in those moments, it felt like I had someone to talk to, but it wasn't another person. It was me, but it was me that has lived out my potential. So it was like past me was talking to future me, but the future me that past me was talking to is kind of now present me. So it's like I kind of had another person, but I didn't at the same time, if that makes any kind of sense. I don't know. I might need to go take my medicine to stabilize my
No,
personalities.
no, I'll tell you right now that that actually is really like I understand that. I understand that, and I feel like that's something sometimes you either do one of two things. You either suppress that inner self or you interact with it. And that suppression can sometimes be a good thing, and that interaction can sometimes be a good thing,
hmm
and vice versa.
Right.
Sometimes suppressing is a bad thing, and sometimes interacting is a bad thing. You know, when I think back to that time where I was in that firefight, and I'm telling myself, I was like, hey, you know what? This is probably it, man. And then myself responding was like, yeah, but hey, you know what? Your girls love you, your wife loves you, your buddies love you.
Yeah.
So if this is going to be it, let's make our peace. Let's make sure these guys don't hurt our buddies, and let's go out like a rock star. It was like like I didn't feel alone in that because I felt like I had myself. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's so I totally get what you're saying. There's times where that suppression or that interaction is both a good or it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
And I think in a way, you got to be able to know which one is necessary, which one is like which one do you need to hop into. You know what I mean? When you encounter your inner self in any given situation, and you need to know, like, okay, do I need to tell this dude shut the f up right now, or do I need to be like, hey man, inner me, what's going on right now?
Right.
What are we doing? Where are we going? what is going on right now?
Yeah.
I need help. And I feel like that's really like, important, I think, and what people need to do is they need to work on that ability to kind of choose
Yeah.
between the two.
You're gonna come to those, and I think we can definitely encounter both situations because of course things like depression and anxiety, those really really prevalent, you know, PTSD, everything mental health issue wise, you're going to have your bad days and your good days. Like it's something you're constantly dealing with, but you're going to have those days that are just a little bit tougher than others. And on those days, I definitely think those super just uptight, just I don't know what the fuck's going on kind of days are the days where you need to sit down and have a just adult conversation with yourself. Like I think you need to be very, very calm and collected in that kind of self communication. And then the days that are a little bit easier to deal with, I feel like are the days that you can probably just look yourself in the mirror and say, "Shut the fuck up, quit being a bitch. You're better than this. Get back at it." And it's so strange to think about that because like is that really like it does help, but it's like it, it's almost like it kind of makes things, I don't want to say it makes things worse because it doesn't, but like when I looked in the mirror and crying out loud, I still do it most days, and I say, you know what, we got some shit to work on. Come on, let's get to it. Put your boots on, get in the mud, kind of thing. It doesn't really make my mental health issues worse. No, this is the word I'm looking for. It makes me more aware of them because like
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
like those days where you sit down and have that calm collected conversation with yourself, it's more of like a gradual change. So it's like you're at 1 mile an hour, and then you accelerate to 5, and then to 10, 15, so on and so forth, little, tiny little baby steps. But
Yeah.
then you've got those days where it's just like you get up, look in the mirror, God, you're fat, stop eating so much Taco Bell, 0 to 100, go kick ass. And it's like, the fuck did I just say to myself? And then you start to thinking, okay, all right, that's what I said. Now, why did I say that? Oh, okay. Wow. And it's more in your face because you didn't take those baby steps. And that's why I think each kind of reaction like that can serve a purpose. Like most people would be like, well, it's like what you said, where it's like you can either communicate with yourself or ignore yourself. Well, it's like most people would be like, wouldn't ignoring yourself kind of be counterproductive? I mean, in certain situations,
It's all
it
yeah,
could
it's
be.
situational.
But at the same time, it's like you're not really you're not really ignoring the full scope of things. Like you're putting blinders on. You're focusing on the smaller picture and ignoring, like I'm sitting here literally holding my hands up to my fucking face looking at my PC. But it's like I'm I'm not ignoring the monitor in front of me. I'm just ignoring my other two monitors, one to my left, one to my right. And then as I get more accustomed to what I'm seeing on this main monitor, I start to kind of spread my hands out a little bit, and then all of a sudden the second and third monitor come back into picture. They're still there. They didn't go anywhere. The $500 to buy the 2 monitors damn sure didn't get refunded to my bank account. That I do know. So, yeah, I am ignoring it. And, if, a hot redhead with, boobs popped up on my left monitor right now, yeah, I'd probably miss out on it. And I'd be a little sad because I like redheads and I like boobs. But it's not a bad thing. Like it's okay to narrow your focus and take those baby steps. Work on one thing at a time. Work on going through with your welder and checking each link in your chain and making sure there's no cracks. And if there are cracks, stick welding it, giving it back that structural integrity it needs. And then as you do that, you can start to focus on more of the picture. And then on, the counterpoint, the opposite to that, it's 100% fine to have those days where you just look at the whole picture and you deal with it all at once. So, like the monitor example, obviously they're right here in front of me. It's a really good analogy. But if these were, 3 iPhones sitting in front of me, I'd look at all 3 of them at the same time. It's a lot less information to take in. I mean, that's a fucking 5-inch screen. 3 of them at the same time looking at, not a problem. But having 3 27-inch monitors in front of me, it's a lot more information. It's okay to just kind of, pick a piece, work with that piece, go on to the next piece. It's like a puzzle, one piece at a time. You can, do all your edges and then fill in the middle, or you can, stare really hard at the box, say fuck under your breath 11 times and be like, all right, that's his nose, so it goes here. It's fine to pick it apart and, defocus on the outermost points until you're okay with what you have right in front of you. So I don't know. That's another one of those discussions that I've gotten into quite a few times. Actually, one of my psychology college professors argues. Well, I don't know if he still does. I haven't spoken to him in a while, but he used to argue like hell about that point. He said, you can't ignore anything. You got to look at the whole picture at once because if you put this piece into place, you got to make sure it doesn't affect all the other pieces, blah, 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 blah. All right. Well, professor, what if you get overwhelmed? Wouldn't that be counterintuitive and probably add to your mental health instead of making it better? Like, don't you think it would make it worse, that feeling of overwhelm? No, look at the big picture all at once. It's just, no, it's okay to take things apart. You don't have to stare at the entire Empire State Building. You can look at, one bolt on one hinge on one door that has that door held into place. Because without that one bolt, or screw, I suppose you don't really use bolts to mount hinges with, but without that one fastener, that hinge would be off, causing that door to be off, causing something about the building to be off. So, yeah, you can stare at the Empire State Building. Beautiful building, absolute work of art. But it's perfectly normal, perfectly acceptable, and in fact, for most people, it's the much more preferred way of coping with things, myself included, to just take one step at a time. Take your green Legos and build your grass. And then add your brown Legos that make up the trees. And then your white and red Legos that build your quaint little cottage in the middle of nowhere. And then you can, add your little people and your, wildlife. You can fill in the details as you go along. Because, I mean, realistically, the end result is still the same. You're just looking at it a different way. It's all about perception. And I think if people could learn to be a little more analytical, a little more self-aware, goes back to
Mhm.
like we were talking about earlier, communicating with yourself. If they were, just had 5% more self-awareness about what they need, focus on that one big issue that's weighing heavily upon them and address it instead of trying to deal with 7 things at once, we could probably see. I mean, obviously, it wouldn't be just total improvement, but I do believe it would start to trend in a positive manner. And if those people that are taking that baby step are just like, what, this doesn't work for me,
Mm.
and they want to see the big picture all at once, that's fine too. It's all about what we as individuals need. You don't have to say, all right, well, 17 other people I know have depression and they're all taking this antidepressant, so I'm going to take that antidepressant. Well, it might work for you. It could. But you could have side effects that they're not, because we're each unique in our own way. And because our bodies and our entire beings are unique in their own way, that can sometimes make our mental health unique in its own individual way as well. So that, I mean, if those 17 people don't have side effects for their that certain antidepressant, great. Like that's a good outcome. But if you take it, speaking theoretically, of course,
Mhm.
and you do have a side effect, that's, I mean, unless the side effect is, heat vision, ability to fly, super strength, something like that. Side effects are typically negative. Is the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
So it's okay to do things differently from the way other people are doing it, because we're all different. And I think that's another one of just the really beautiful things about life is like, yeah, I'm fucked up. I know 1,000 other people that say they're fucked up, but we're all fucked up in our own little special fucked up way.
Yeah.
And I
And I think
think,
that like it's super important to
yeah,
know. Yeah.
like it's such, I don't know. I think that's definitely, like, I don't want to say hindered because I don't think it's hindered it, but I think it's kind of a piece in the will of trying to, have better mental health overall, because I don't know, this is coming from somebody that took psychology classes in college. And I don't know, it's really, it's out of my bubble to say this, but I think
Mhm.
a lot of psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers, anybody that really works with mental health, I think they, and this is, of course, is not all of them. There are exceptions to the rule, but I think there's a trend where they all try and deal with all of their patients, clients, whatever noun you want to use in that sentence. They try and deal with everybody the exact same way.
Yeah.
And are you going to see progress from that? Yes, because you are going to have those overlaps between people. But if we all kind of like slowed down and took, a minute to understand each individual just a little bit more, the amount of progress and improvement I think we could see as a result of that would be exponentially larger. And I think that's another reason that self-communication, that self-awareness is so important, because if I'm more self-aware of my, of what's going on, so more self-aware of myself, let's see how many times I can say the word self in the next 30 seconds. If I can better understand what's going on, inside my house. I don't know why I always like comparing my mental health to a house. But if I can, have a better grasp on things, not only does that help me, for those things that I can tackle by myself, it also helps me when, things get a little crazy and I need that person to talk to lean on, because it's prepared me to be able to more, give a more thorough, a better explanation of what's going on. Like if I didn't talk to myself, just ignored everything, just flat outright completely ignored, and then I went to go see a therapist, like, well, what's wrong? I'm depressed. Why? That doesn't help. I might as well have saved the gas and the money I'm paying the therapist, because it's not progress. But if I'm listening to myself and I go see a therapist, it's like, hi doctor, I'm depressed. I would, like to talk to you about it, maybe seek some, potential medication, so on and so forth. Okay, well, why are you depressed? Well, I've made these decisions in my life. I've done things. I've alienated people. It could be 1,000 different things depending on who the person is. And granted, this goes back to therapists treating everybody the same, or so on and so forth. But they would be better prepared to help your individual case as well. So I definitely think, what, that's something I want to do a potential later episode on self-awareness, so on and so forth, because we're at damn near 2 hours and it's 11 o'clock at night.
I'll tell you too, like, I took before I changed my degree, my previous degree was going to be in behavioral psychology and diving into like specialized fields of abnormal psychology as well. So and I want to save that for
human behavior, and behavioral psychology is such a fun topic to discuss.
And because there are things that I have studied over the years in college before I transitioned over to my current degree, which I'm finishing up here in the next semester or two, national security and intelligence analysis.
Oh,
but yeah, that one's a real fun one. Nothing can get your brain contemplating more information than it needs to than intelligence analysis.
Right.
But I'll tell you that self-awareness is something that I want to talk in length about with you on our next
absolutely,
because
that's definitely a standalone episode by itself.
Absolutely, that's gonna be a really good, and what a great plug for the next episode too.
Yeah, look at that chat, we brought it full circle. Yeah,
full circle. Excellent.
But that's definitely a good stopping point. I think it is. I don't think we could get better than that.
No, it was good. It was good for at least, even though this is the second
quote unquote
episode,
second episode, first with you.
I definitely would think that this went very well.
Oh, absolutely. And I like the fact,
I love the dynamic.
Yeah, I like the fact that the first episode got brought up too, because it gave you a chance to, like, kind of, reflect yourself and give your opinion on it. So it was like, yeah, I did that first episode before TheDeadFett was, on here with me, us co-hosting it, but it was like, here's his opinion on it, guys. So it's like, yeah, you guys didn't get to see it last Thursday, but it's here now. So yeah, see, look at that. We're watching out for you guys. Don't worry, we got you.
Absolutely.
We're not taking this half-assed. I promise.
Make sure everybody you better hit that bell. or else
Mm,
you're not gonna know when the
ring,
next one drops.
ring the
Ring the bell.
bell. We
This is the only
we
time where
love
ringing the
ringing
bell
the
is gonna be
bell.
good. Let's do it. Let's get after it. But
But
dude, I really enjoyed it so much.
absolutely, I did too. I am definitely. I think my excitement when I got off work today from I was a little cautious. I'm like, you know what, this is brand new. How's the dynamic gonna go? Which went great, so that's good. But
Absolutely.
it was like
Absolutely.
that unknown. Now it's just like, okay, well, all right. Obviously, this shit works, so now I can just genuinely be excited for next week.
Dude, 100%. And that's the best thing about it too is when the conversation grows organically, you don't have to like force a lot of things. You just
Right.
find something you want to talk about that's relevant that both people can have some sort of
Yeah.
insight to, and then just
Let
let
it
it grow on
roll.
its own. Let it roll, man.
Mm,
Absolutely. This is awesome.
definitely. Definitely. Well, thank you for coming on, and thank you for dealing with me and committing to dealing with me because we both have a passion about mental health.
I
Even
love
though
it, man.
I can be a bit of an interesting one sometimes, but
No, this is awesome, man. I love it.
that's a whole other situation. But
Yeah.
I'm definitely excited for next week. Um, but I'm gonna let you get off of here, and I think I'm probably just gonna go play Genshin Impact because we love giant swords and anime girls.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
But I will definitely talk to you. Obviously we'll interact before next week, but I will definitely talk to you in the
Absolutely.
Discord server. I hope you have a fantastic night, Fett.
You too,
And
brother, man. Thank you so much,
yeah.
man.
All right. See ya.
All right, you take it easy, bro.
All right, you too.
All right, bye bye.
All right, everyone. I don't know. I didn't know if I want to outro while he's still here or what. Um, but thank you all for tuning in. It has been amazing to say the least. Like absolutely amazing. I'm getting DMs from Fett right now. But thank you all for tuning in. Let me reply to this. But I love all of you. Thank you for hanging out in chat. Even Dill Pickle coming in and, of course, mentioning the word penis, which seems to be the trend these days. Love you, Dill. But thank you all for tuning in. Um, I'm I'm literally on the verge of tears right now. I'm so genuinely excited for this. Thank you to TheDeadFett. His links are down below. His Twitter, his YouTube channel as well as my links: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Obviously, you don't need my YouTube link because, well, you're here. Um, but make sure to subscribe if you're not subscribed. Like the video, ring that bell so that you can stay up to date on all things Killzone Fleek, because I promise we're gonna be making some big moves. Not only with the Let's Get Mental podcast with myself and TheDeadFett, but also in terms of other content, streams, recorded videos. We're gonna be doing some big things. I've got a lot of things planned, and I'm really excited to see how it works out because, well, the last idea I had was the Let's Get Mental podcast, and obviously that's gonna be amazing. So hopefully the rest of my ideas are that good. Um, but I love all of you. Like I said, thank you for hanging out, stopping by, watching, listening, so on and so forth. One thing I do want to say is I am looking into getting the podcast distributed on not only Spotify but also Apple Podcast as well. So you guys will have, a few more options in terms of listening. Either, watching it live here or of course listening to the audio only version on those platforms. But I believe that's enough plugging for now. I hope all of you have a wonderful, wonderful night. And I hope all of you have a fantastic Friday tomorrow. For those of you that have to work, I hope you have a wonderful day at work. For those of you who do not, I hope you are very productive. Do what you want to do, whether it be relaxing, housework, so on and so forth. But I am out of here for the night. And I will see everyone tomorrow night. We will be streaming tomorrow night. I'm not 100% sure what I'm playing yet. I think I want to start my playthrough of the Spyro Reignited trilogy because I haven't gotten to stream that yet. But I think that's about it. I will see everyone tomorrow. Game to be determined. We'll figure it out. But I know I keep saying I love all of you guys, but I genuinely do. I love my community. And I will see everyone tomorrow. Good night.